in becoming physically soft, you become spiritually soft. I believe it was St. Thomas Aquinas that said that the physical conforms to the operations of the soul. And I think it was he that also explored the idea that the soul was the mover of the body. So if we ourselves are literally not moving, we're not lifting, we're not doing anything meaningful with our bodies, if we look at our bodies as merely just a means of transportation for our heads, which is much of the modern world, especially in the West, how strong can our souls really be? How faithful can we really be? In what proportion and strength can we have all of the virtues? How can we display those virtues in proper order and in proper expression in our own lives? Now, that's a bit of an idea exploration out loud, and I know my meathead brain can only reduce this down to the most simplistic way to explain things. But when we say grace builds on nature, this is at least where my brain goes, is that outside of being in a state of grace, which is the most important thing I'll touch on, obviously, in a second. As Catholics, living a sacramental life is the utmost of importance, because I get a lot of cope in the comments when it comes to videos like this, urging Catholic men to be more, to have more fortitude and to develop themselves, lower their body fat, lift weights, defend themselves, etc. Is that, well, the saints weren't physically hard. St. Paul said X, Y, or Z. Well, first of all, you're not a saint. And if you are, obviously this video is not for you, because you're much holier than I am. And you're not St. Paul either. The fact of the matter is, the saints lived hard lives that didn't require them to recreate fake work like we do in the gym. They were too busy being martyred and living incredibly difficult lives where they had nothing but opportunities of adversity to grow in these specific virtues, which led to them being saints. But in the insulated, comfortable world that we live in right now, we don't have that same ability, at least not us in the West. So it's a bunch of cope, because you get a bunch of guys that are possessed by a spirit of sloth that don't actually want to pick up the full weight of their cross, which I should add that I think they said that the cross that Jesus carried was like over 300 pounds, and he still dragged that thing uphill. Obviously, he's the God man. He's capable of much, much more. But in his humanity, being obviously 100% of both, he carried that cross on his back and carried it uphill. So why are we creating so much cope around doing these things? And I'm also not talking about doing this in a disordered fashion. And so just to kind of, I'm already on the point, so I might as well finish the point. Staying in a state of grace, partaking in the Eucharist, going to regular confession, which obviously all of these things require you being in a state of grace, honoring holy days of obligation, and trying to, crucify our flesh in terms of our defects and our lower faculties. Those things are the most important things when it comes to being a Catholic and living a good Catholic life. Nobody is saying to put physical culture. I'm not saying to put physical training and culture above that. There's nothing that'll supersede that, of course. That's number one. But we're talking about virtue and the supernatural virtues and the natural virtue, right? So outside of a state of grace, these virtues, fortitude, temperance, prudence, only have natural ends. So if you're a guy that's in perpetual mortal sin and you haven't repented, haven't gone to confession, sure, you can attain some level of virtue, but they only have a natural end, okay? So you're physically strong, cool. Okay, you might be muscular, you might be physically strong, but that's where it ends. There's nothing else there. Same thing for temperance and prudence. You might be lean, you might have some money, but that's it. Now, when we're in a state of grace, when I think grace builds on nature, if we have these virtues in powerful order, and we're able to be physically strong, have lower body fat levels, do good with our finances, etc., and obviously primarily putting the focus on our sacramental life, when we are re-infused, because that's what happens when we're in a state of grace after we receive absolution, is we're re-infused with those virtues, the supernatural virtues. So if we already have a firm foundation of the natural virtues, how much more can the supernatural be built upon them? Grace builds on nature. I'm not the only one that spoke about this. I'm going to link an article below where Pope Pius XII in the 50s addressed the Italian sporting associations and talking about how important sport was. And in this case, when we're talking about sport, I'm talking about physical training, but he was speaking of the same thing. He also mentioned grace builds on nature. He also mentioned no pain, no gain, not to mention that the only faith that gives the proper honoring and dignity and respect to the body has been the Catholic faith. I mean, just look at theology of the body, just one of many works talking about our bodies. We're not simply, like the Manichaeans put it, spirits trapped in bodies. We're 100% spirit, 100% flesh. We're hylomorphic. We're form and matter. How much more powerful can our spirits be, our souls be, our spiritual lives, our interior lives be? How much more can we combat our defects if we're also crucifying and mortifying the flesh, right? Because this is the thing with, and I've experienced the extreme of, let's say, fortitude in the physical, where I did it to combat effeminacy, but taken to its extreme without it being well ordered, it leads you to being more effeminate. You care more about how your abs look, you care more about how you're lifting, and there's really no fulfillment outside of that. But now that I've put my spiritual life, my obedience to God, my staying in a state of grace, all these things above that, not only do I enjoy training more, but it's become perfectly, well, not perfectly, I don't think there's any aspect of myself that's perfect. It's become much more well-ordered, where I'm not nearly as bothered by these things. And in fact, I think I'm way more faithful and obedient Catholic as a result. Both of them work together, okay? And that's at least where my head goes when I think of Aquinas' quote on the physical conforming to the operations of the soul. So when I see a grossly overweight Catholic or a physically weak or feeble Catholic, I think, man, there are going to be aspects of his interior life that have severe defects. Because if this is how he's presenting himself, how strong can he really be? How faithful can he really be? He could be holier than me in many ways too, right? I'm not discounting that. It's also when we display this physical virtue, we're lowering our body fat, and we're practicing temperance and fasting. If we're lifting weights, we're learning how to defend ourselves in a mixed martial arts context or martial arts context, whatever. It is an example, as Pius XII puts it, as the unceasing work for Christ. We understand that our conversion is not just a one-time event, it's a daily event. And we are constantly striving, just like St. Paul says, and I believe of Philippians, we're striving toward the upward call of Christ Jesus. So it's a straining toward the goal. That's the words that he used were specific, a straining toward the goal. Every day I'm trying to strain toward that goal. But I'm recreating that strain in these other areas as well. I'm not just a soul trapped in a body. I'm as much body as I am soul. And I know these things can work in perfect harmony. Because again, just like Pius XII said, that there's been no other faith that shows the dignity, the respect, and the honoring to the vessel that is Christ. It's also another way to witness and marvel at creation. When I get under a weight that I thought was going to crush me, or seeing how far my body has come, not just in, muscularity, but in physical strength, that's really what it's about. It's the physical strength. It's the objective. And when I see that and when I experience it, I marvel at, yes, we might have science to explain and describe what's happening here in terms of like neural adaptation, nervous system efficiency and hypertrophy, but it's God that put these things in motion. So it is a movement meditation for me. It also, I think it firmly, and this going to sound really meathead-ish, but that's what I am. I own it. It reconnects a man with his desire to grip the steel and go to war. Again, this is not war. I'm not equating lifting weights to war, not even close. However, because we live in such comfortable cubicle-like Uber Eats type of lives, recreating this discomfort reconnects with a man's ability to do hard things and grip the steel. It reconnects a man with the toil of being a man, right? So our common ancestor, Adam, was banished to render resources from the earth after the fall. It reconnects us with that. There is something very primal and spiritual about it. In fact, I'm the most present sometimes when I'm in the middle of a set. And I really feel God's presence working in those moments. And it's been incredibly edifying for me, especially when coupled with, first and foremost, well-ordering my spiritual life. So I know I'm talking a lot about sort of more philosophical benefits. Let's talk about now some realistic standards for guys to attain. Now, my standards might be a little inflated because I've been in powerlifting for such a long time. But I think at the very least, if I were to give some, like a minimum baseline, and then I think a realistic guideline. So I think there's two. So minimum baseline, and this is regardless of body weight. A man should be able to squat 3 plates, bench 2 plates, and deadlift 4 plates. At the very least. All men, I believe, honestly, 99.9999% of men at least, can do those things. In my head, something that I think is a little bit harder to do, but still realistic for 99% of the population, is a 2 times body weight squat, a 1 1/4 to 1.5 times body weight bench press, and a 2 1/4 to 2.5 times body weight deadlift. It's going to take you some time to get there. But I've experienced that I'm fundamentally not the same man having gone from 500-pound deadlift to an 800-pound deadlift. Now, you don't have to take it to that kind of an extreme. I have no use for an 800-pound deadlift. I think the spiritual benefits past a certain point too, it just kind of gets a little extreme. Like you're just keeping track of it for sport. That's something that I enjoy, and it's something that I keep in its proper place, and it's a beautiful hobby of mine. So I'm not saying anybody has to take it to that extreme, but at least achieving these minimums and getting your body fat down to 13 to 15%, so you're healthier. It's about physical vitality, physical health, but also how much more, again, can the supernatural virtues be built upon these natural virtues, because they act upon each other. How much can the natural conform to the supernatural if these natural virtues are already in place, if we have some degree of physical fortitude, if we have some degree of temperance and control over our food and our appetites? How much holier could we be? How much more can we put vice to death? How much more can we conquer these our lower faculties and our defects? That is what this is all about. Nobody's trying to put physical culture above this. And I think those standards for the majority of men are very realistic. And I think they're also important, keeping in mind, this is an example of the unceasing work for Christ. And one final point, if we take two people that are equal in holiness, okay, this is also part of being somebody that evangelizes other people for the faith, right? We're trying to bring masculinity back to Catholicism. And this aesthetics also matter. Okay, look at we're, again, like I said in the last video, we're not iconoclasts, okay? We have icons, aesthetics matter. So if we have two people that are equal in holiness, one is physically formidable, and he looks like a physical specimen to some degree, at least he looks well-built and healthy, and you have another guy who's like skinny fat or grossly overweight and kind of just looks sloppily put together or weak. Who is going to be a more powerful evangelizer, somebody that brings more people to the faith, more men to the faith? It's going to be the physically strong guy. So this is not about vanity at all. This is not just about the natural ends. This is about the supernatural ends. This is also about bringing more people to Christ. This is about the unceasing work for Christ, that when these things are ordered, well ordered, they are powerful tools to increase in our sainthood and our holiness. And that's what it's all about. It's also bringing dignity, respect to the body that God has loaned us. So I don't mean to belabor the point. You're going to see more of this from me. And I think it's really important, especially in the effeminate culture that we live in. And unfortunately, I think the church has a crisis of effeminacy, a lack of masculinity. So glory to Jesus Christ. And real quick, if any of you guys want help with this, I do offer one-to-one men's mentorship. I'll leave the application in the description below. And I also have a Catholic Masculinity Project men's group. We have a free group and the Inner Circle, which is a paid group. And I'll leave those links below as well. The last video was really well received, and I really appreciate everybody that subscribed and commented. So like, comment, subscribe, share, and I'll catch you in the next one. God bless you guys.